All right, section 7, maintaining system configuration. They're talking about creating and restoring a UCS archive under appropriate circumstances. So they want us to discuss scenarios in which restoring a UCS archive is appropriate. So a UCS archive is a user configuration set, and what it is, it's a backup of the box. It's a snapshot in time of what was going on in the box when you took the snapshot. So we highly recommend you're making UCS archives of your box on a frequent basis, because if something goes wrong and you need to restore that UCS archive, you have it, right? Of course, we never know, if things are going to fail hardware-wise. We may lose a power supply and it goes down and we need to RMA the box. And did you get the last UCS of your box off there before before it crashed and went down? Things that could be critical that can occur can keep you from getting an archive at the last minute. So doing them on a regular basis is a very smart thing to do. You can do a UCS archive simply by going into the box, going to System Archives, create a new. You should be doing System Archives before you do any event. So I'm going to go in and make some configuration changes today. I need to build some new virtual servers. Before I get started, everything is in sync, and all the pair and my HA pair are the same. I'm going to go make an archive of both boxes, and then I'm going to start my work. After I've gotten done with my work, if everything's good in the way I want it, I'm going to leave it this way because everything is fine. I'm going to make a new archive of that new standing position of the boxes and configuration of the boxes, make that archive, and then I'm going to take and get the latest one off the box and store it off box. I'm going to set up nightly restores or nightly archives of the box so that I can restore if I have to. How do we restore a UCS archive? You're going to go into System Archives. You're going to click on the archive you want to restore. You open it up, and you click the Restore button. And that would restore this archive, which was made on Wednesday, September 11th. However this box was configured and looked at the time that was taken is what the box will now look like when it comes back up and online. If it's the active unit you're restoring an archive to, expect a failover to the other unit, right? These are just typical functions of the box. If you're going to go in and say restore this box to a new archive, it's going to have to load that config and reboot the box. And if that was the current active system, the second you made the change, it failed the pair over. So you should probably be working on your standby units. Good typical practice. We talk about that a little later as we go through as far as installing code and things of that nature. Something else I usually like to bring up whenever I'm talking about archives is F5 support may also ask you for a UCS of your box. It could happen. They could say, hey, we could use it. Can you give us a UCS of your box so we can restore it here in our lab and try to figure out what the problems may be? What I'll typically tell you, especially for you guys who are partner SEs and you're in the field, you definitely do not want to take a UCS file of your company or the company you're working for's UCS file off of their box and have it stored on you on a mem stick that you own in any way, shape, or form. Because inside this archive is everything about this box, including their private keys, right? So for all of their SSL certificates. So you want to make sure that if you need an archive, a UCS archive, for any reason other than for restoring to this box when you need to back it up, if you need to take it off to be able to troubleshoot problems or look at stuff, you probably want to create a new one that does not include the private keys, because there's too much risk there involved for you to take home some other company's private keys inside an archive. You don't want that to happen. And more than likely, F5 wouldn't even need your private keys to be able to troubleshoot the problems you're seeing in their labs. And if you're taking a QK view and you're loading it up to iHealth, there are settings there that strip out all of your private information up there too. So you're good with all of that, but when you're making these archives, there is a way to make an archive without including your private keys. However, if you're wanting to restore that one later and there's no private keys in it, a lot of your traffic's not going to work, right? So you want to make sure if it's an archive you're backing up and making for the sake of a restore on the box, you're definitely including those keys. We have the ability to do, to create and to load archives from command line. This is an example of us loading a UCS archive from command line. I have a switch here thrown onto the end of this command that is the no license switch. And this one is handy dandy whenever you're doing our VLabs, because every 45 days your license is going to expire. And if the archive you're trying to restore is older than 45 days old, it's going to have an expired license key in it. So when you do the restore of that archive that's over 45 days old, the first thing it's going to do is fail the license file as it loads, right? It's going to load the config and say, hey, I've got an invalid license, and you're going to have to relicense the box. So if you were to get into the box and the license has already expired, and because you wanted to reload some older configs and the box has an expired license, you're going to call up Eric and say, hey, I need another 45-day license key for my VLab. And I'm going to say, hey, not a problem. I'm going to generate you a license key. I'm going to send it out to you. And you're going to put the license key on so you can get into the box. And now you're in the box and you restore an archive so you can get back to that lab you wanted to work on. And it's got an old license key in it. And it just blew out the new one I gave you. So what you're going to want to do to restore that older archive that you know has an expired license in it is to do it by command line and use the no license switch, and it'll keep the current valid license I just gave you working and reload the old config. Kind of handy. Can't do this from the GUI. This can only be done from the command line. Given a scenario, discuss when it's appropriate to create that UCS archives. Like I said before, I kind of already hit this. You definitely want to do these before you start a change in your config and after you're done making your changes to your config. And you want to have a UCS archive off both your active and your standby units and your pairs, not just off the active units. Identify the components and methods associated to automating and scheduling tasks within Enterprise Manager. So far, almost everything we've talked about has had to do with LTM, or the Big IP platform as a whole. This particular test in Objective 7, the rest of the objectives here in Objective 7, are all based around Enterprise Manager. And so if you're not familiar with Enterprise Manager, this could be something else you need to run in your VLabs to get familiar with before you take this exam. It's just as simple as it is to do LTM as a VE. You can go out to the download site on F5's website and download Enterprise Manager as a VE, and you can spin it up inside your VLabs environment as another unit running inside the VLabs environment. You're going to have to get a 45-day license key from someone at F5, could be me, give you an Enterprise Manager license to use while you're studying for the exam. Once again, you're going to want to do, I think we were still on the latest release, or we're at the latest release of Enterprise Manager that's out right now. So if you just get the latest release there, you should still be fine. I don't think too much has changed since 11.1 of LTM. Identify inside Enterprise Manager which tasks can be automated using Enterprise Manager. So what can I do with Enterprise Manager? What can I automate? I can automate nightly backups. I can make UCS archives every night and back them up on the LTM and then move that archive off the box. I could update software, automated updates of software through Enterprise Manager for my LTM platforms or Big IP platforms. I could update SSL certificates from Enterprise Manager. So there's a whole list of tasks you can perform on Enterprise Manager automated for the Big IP platform. And there's a lot of good reading in the study guide, and like I said, getting exposure to this is going to be you spinning up a VE of Enterprise Manager if you don't have one in your labs you can mess with. Identify which subtasks exist. Some of them don't, right? So if you're installing a hotfix, you can't necessarily reboot into that newly upgraded volume at the end of that process. So I may be able to install the hotfix, but the reboot into that volume I can't do from the automated tasks. I have to do it as a manual functionality. Outline Enterprise Manager's method of creating automated UCS archives. So you need to go through Enterprise Manager and understand the steps it takes to set up the automated UCS archive creation process inside Enterprise Manager. Once again, you're just going to have to work your way through all the steps. There is a guide out there that'll work you through all of this. No, I don't have a ton of screenshots for Enterprise Manager on these decks. Describe Enterprise Manager's behavior when encountering task failures. So when you set up a task, it's going to say, I'm triggered to run this task at 2 in the morning. If that task doesn't succeed, it's going to flag that the task failed. So when you get back into the box, you're going to be able to see clearly that tasks you had scheduled for this particular time did not succeed with little red flags on them. It's pretty visual, pretty easy to understand what did work and what didn't work as far as your tasks are concerned. You need to be able to discuss the strategy for deploying a hotfix from Enterprise Manager to multiple high availability pairs. I like to say to almost all of the SEs I deal with and all of the people in the field that I deal with, when you're dealing with Enterprise Manager, the process you would take to manually go do a software install on a big IP platform pair, high availability pair, is the same pattern you're going to follow in Enterprise Manager. You're just going to build it as an automated task, right? So the practices you've always followed when it comes to installing software code to a big IP high availability pair is the same pattern you're going to want to do it in the automated section when you build the tasks. So what does that mean? Typically what we say is anytime you want to make a change to a big IP platform when it comes to upgrading software or even making changes to the configuration, you always want to work on your standby box first, right? It's a best practice. So if I have a high availability pair, the active unit is currently processing traffic, I could go to the standby box and upgrade the code or install a hotfix or create new VIPs, pools, nodes, members, whatever I feel like doing on the standby box, and it's not going to affect current traffic. I then fail the pair over to make the standby active and see if what I just did, the changes I just made, are effective and are working. If they are great, we leave it like it is and we can now upgrade what is now the new standby box or do our changes to that box. If it's not, I can always fail right back to where we were. The failback is very fast. The failovers between pairs is extremely fast. So it's less of an impact as far as the outage is concerned. Kind of the process we follow or try to follow whenever we're doing stuff. So once again, always make your changes on the standby box. First, fail to it if all is good. Proceed with changing what is now the new standby box. If it's not, you can always fail back, fix what you had wrong, try again, things of that nature. How can Enterprise Manager be used to track a config change on a managed device? So just because you have Enterprise Manager within your environment or in your customer's environment doesn't mean that's the only way I can go make a change now. So I may have used Enterprise Manager to disable some nodes in a pool or members in a pool. That doesn't mean that I can't go log directly into an LTM platform that I have in the company and go disable some pools and nodes and save the config. You can do it from either way. You can use Enterprise Manager or you can do it manually on the boxes still. The key here is that can Enterprise Manager recognize that a change has been made on the box since the last time it touched the box? And the answer there is yes. So if you have gone and made a change to a config and he's made a backup, he can see that there's a difference there because the config files have a timestamp on the file. The date timestamp on the file has changed. Every time you touch a file in Linux, it changes that date timestamp. And Enterprise Manager is going to be able to trigger to say, if the date time on my last config that I backed up from that box or I have an archive from on that box is different from what's currently on the box, there has been changes made on that box since the last time I touched it. It's not necessarily doing a diff, right, to say here is what changed. Line 26 is now different from what line 26 used to be. It's saying that date timestamp on the file is different, so there has to have been a change to that file since the last time I touched it. Discuss how to use Enterprise Manager to determine the SSL certificate expiration on managed devices. Enterprise Manager can read the SSL certificate files to know when the expiration date is coming up on your SSL certificates. So you can actually use it to trigger you to say 30 days ahead of whenever my certificates are about to expire, send me a notification or let's get those renewed. Basically, you can have Enterprise Manager alert you to the fact that they're coming up for expiration. Then you're going to manually go out to VeriSign or whoever you've bought your certificates through. You're going to order some new ones. You're going to put them on Enterprise Manager and have Enterprise Manager push them out to the big IP platforms. You could still manually go out and update all your certificates on all of your LTM pairs, big IP, GTMs, whatever you have out there. But Enterprise Manager can push that out for you. Not only can he see and determine if they're coming up for expiration, but he can also push out the news. All right, Objective 7.4, let's talk about managing software. If you were given an HA pair, could you describe the appropriate strategy for deploying a new software image? What I usually like to typically talk about here is, I usually do it on the whiteboard. So let's go draw up a diagram of HA pairs on the whiteboard. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about deploying software on our big IP platforms. And deploying software can be done in a hitless manner. You can actually install new software, even hot fixes, without taking a hit to the system if they're done correctly. Of course, any HA pair failover between the pairs, as I was discussing earlier, is never 100% hitless unless you've configured it to be stateful. And even then, you don't always configure everything to be stateful, simply because certain protocols are so chatty that you wouldn't want them to be, connection mirroring to be turned on for them. We'll talk about a little bit about that, I think, later. You get deeper into it in other topics. So what we're going to talk about now is deploying that software image across your HA pair. So if we have an HA pair, you're going to see me draw this in a little bit different way than I've done in the past, because we're not talking necessarily about the box as a whole. I'm talking about disk. So ever since we went to version 11, we've been using Volume Manager. Rather than hard disk partitioning, it's been software-based volumes within the Linux operating system kernel, microkernel. So what we're dealing with is when you get a box shipped from F5 now, you're getting 3 volumes, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, pre-built in volumes on the box. So this is Unit 1, this is Unit 2 in the pair. And it'll come shipped with software pre-installed. Let's say you got this box and it's 11.1.0 is what's pre-installed on that partition. It may or not, they may or may not have installed the same OS on the secondary partition. And that is very typical as well. Okay, so let's say we've got 2 different boxes, 3 volumes came preloaded, built on the box. 2 volumes were loaded with 11.0, 11.1.0 on them. I'm only doing that for the sake of the level of the exam OS. And as these boxes came in, you basically took them, unboxed, racked, stacked, cabled them up, connected into it, set the out-of-band management IP address, configured all your VLANs, put all your self IPs on the box, and then configured up your VIPs, pools, nodes, and everything else for both this box and this box running in Volume 1. So currently, we're active in Volume 1. If I wanted to deploy new software onto this box, ever since version 11X, I cannot install software onto the current partition I'm currently actively running in. In the old versions, version 9X and 10X, we actually booted into an image loader in RAM that would tell you could come back and say, I want to install the new code right over where I'm currently running. But ever since we went to 11X, we've had the new volume system, and actually what you're going to end up doing is you cannot install to the current running volume that you're in. So you're going to jump in to install configuration, or to install software or a hotfix onto the box, and what you're going to have to do is install it to one of your other partition volumes here on the boxes. There are so many people out there to say, well, what if I want to always run in Volume 1? Always. I always want to be running here on my code. Well, what you could do is you could boot into Volume 2 and then install your code back into Volume 1 and then boot back into Volume 1, right? But you've got to be extremely careful if you're doing something like this. And the reason for that is because if you're in Volume 1 and you just simply switch boot and boot up into Volume 2, all the configuration that you're running right now in Volume 1 is not on Volume 2. When you create a new VIP, pull, or a node, it's installing it to the operating system running on this disk. It's not copying that same thing to all disks. So just simply booting into another volume, there's no config here. That out-of-band management you're managing the system through, gone. All the config that was here is not here. It's all gone, right? So when I boot here, it's like having a fresh racked and stacked box that's ready to go, right? It can be a bad day if you take one of the systems and do that, and especially if it's a remote data center, it's a lights out and you can't get to it anymore. You've just basically booted it away from yourself. So what you can do, if you want to go through that process, is you could copy your config from this running volume to this volume. As long as this OS is the same currently as what you have here and here, you could just copy your config down. You could reinstall 11.1.0 here. And in the process of an install from one volume to another, it automatically copies your config down from the active partition to the other partition. Once it's running, once your config is actually on that secondary volume, you can boot to it. And so with a simple boot change, you could boot into the secondary volume on both boxes if you wanted to. And then you could do your install of 11.2. That's what you want to jump to. Up on that volume. And in doing that, it should try to take your current working config in 11.1.0 and install it in 11.2.0. Should you be reading your release notes? Absolutely. Right? Always read your release notes. And we always read our release notes. We never don't read our release notes. I don't know why I'm even bringing it up. It's so common for all of us to do it. But always read those release notes. And then once you've got your config or your new OS installed in your first volume, you could then boot the boxes again and switch your boot back into active on the first volume. And there, you did your config change and you're back in volume 1 like you want it to be. Right? But these processes are hitless. Why? Because if I'm currently running in this manner, like we started out, on 11.1 on both boxes, and I'm active on that partition, that first partition, this box is the active box, this is the standby box. Well, I would come to the standby box and I would do my software upgrade. Let's say I'm not particular about running in volume 1. I don't really care as long as the box is running. I don't care what volume we're in. I'm going to install my 11.2 here. It's going to roll my config forward, hopefully successfully because I've read my release notes. And I'm going to boot the box to there. If everything's good, I'm going to then fail over the pair to there. If everything is working fine, I know we're good, I know this is working fine, then I'm going to come over to this box because it's now the standby unit, this is the active unit, the pair, and I'm going to install my 11.2 code that's going to bring my config forward. Then I'm going to boot to it, and boom, we're right back into a pair. If I want to fail back to test, I can fail back. But either way I look at it, that was a hitless code upgrade. And because I have multiple volumes, I could even say, okay, now I want to do 11.2.2. And I want to put hotfix 1 here. I could do that if I wanted to. Right? And then once I've got it installed, because this is now the standby unit, right? That's active. I could then install that code there, and I could boot to it. I could fail it over again, see if everything's great. If it's not, because we're having some problems with the config loading, boot it back, switch boot back, try again, dork with it. But that failover function between the boxes allows us to have a nice hitless upgrade. Another thing I find kind of interesting, because I've seen this a lot out in the wild world here, that a company, I've had more than one company do this to me. They say, yeah, we want to go to the new 11 code. Let's go to 11.2, because that's where we want to be. We're currently running on 11.1. We want to run on 11.2. This is our active partitions. We're running on 11.1. We want to move to 11.2. But what I want to do, because I own this company and I'm really nervous about this upgrade, I want you to go ahead and upgrade one of these boxes to 11.2, but I want to be able to fail back to 11.1. So what I'd rather you do is upgrade this one, and we'll run on it, keep this one on 11.1. Well, the problem when you have in your HA pair, if a box here is running on 11.2 and this one's running on 11.1, I cannot sync the configs, right? They're not the same operating system. So it's not going to work as far as synchronization is concerned. And if I make a new change, let's say I add a new VIP or a pull or a node to the config, and I can't sync it, then it takes away my ability to fail. The cool part about volumes and having so many slices of the hard drive to work with, and in this case, 2 is really all you need, but 3 makes it very comfortable, is that if I want to go ahead and switch to 11.2 and actively boot here, we can run here for 7 days and keep track of, just like we would have had to have done if we were disparate, keep track of any new VIPs, pulls, or nodes we make, because if for whatever reason we run into a problem a week from now with one of their obscure applications, I can always boot the box back into 11.1 like it was a week ago and just add the new VIPs, pulls, and nodes we may have made over the last week's time. But we have to keep track of everything we've done, right? Because we can't necessarily take the config from 11.2 and move it back to 11.1, as far as I understand. All right. That's a little bit about Volume Manager and how you can deploy software images across an HA pair on their boxes, across their hard drives, and fail over the pairs back and forth. Let's get back to our deck. All right, our next bullet point, we're going to describe the potential impact of booting a device into another volume. I kind of touched on it over there when we were talking about on the whiteboard of booting into a volume that has no config. Or if I needed to boot back from a new volume that we've been running on for several days back to an older volume that we haven't used in a week or two. Any changes we've made since the initial boot into that config or into that particular partition is not on the other partition. And if you're rolling backwards in code, getting your config to load backwards is not as easy as rolling our config forward. So the impact of booting into another volume can be, I can lose connectivity to the box. I literally might not be able to get into it anymore if I boot into the other partition. Discuss common related issues to the migration of a device to a new version of software. I think when we're crossing major releases, this is probably our most dangerous point. If I'm jumping from V9 to V10, it wasn't an easy migration in the beginning. If I was jumping from V10 to V11, it was not an easy migration in the beginning. Why? Because as we add new features to new releases of code, especially across major releases, structure of config changes, right? And that structure of config change says that that config file isn't even structured the way I read a config file today, and it's not going to smoothly load into the new OS. It takes time sometimes for us to get that process of migration from across major releases to work out well. Going from a minor release to a new minor release, most of the time is fine. You're usually not going to have that many issues. Our biggest issues are going to be things like an iRoll event that used to work in this version behaves differently in the new version, or the way it was called, or the way that iRoll event triggered no longer works. So maybe you've got to go through all of your iRolls and assess your events to know that if there is any of that one critical event that doesn't work anymore in the new version, I've got to rewrite those particular scripts to get them to work in the new version. You may run into that kind of thing when migrating from one OS to a new version of OS.